Survivors of Mediterranean rescue say about 60 people died on the trip from Libya. Aid group reports. Honduras ex-First Lady says, presidential bid not meant to protect herself after husband's conviction. Senegal's top opposition leader freed from prison ahead of presidential election this month. Today is Friday, March 15th, 2024. And this is the Dunkley Report, International News. A humanitarian rescue group says survivors aboard a deflating rubber dinghy rescued in the central Mediterranean Sea have reported that some 60 people who departed Libya with them more than a week ago perished during the journey. SOS Mediterranee says its rescue ship, Ocean Viking, spotted the dinghy Wednesday with 25 people on board. 2 were unconscious and evacuated by an Italian Coast Guard helicopter for treatment. The other 23 were in serious condition, exhausted, dehydrated, and with burns from fuel on board the boat. SOS Mediterranee spokesman Francesco Creazzo said that the survivors were all male, 12 of them minors, with 2 of those not yet teenagers. They were from Senegal, Mali, and the Gambia. Honduras former First Lady Ana García de Hernández says her decision to seek the presidency next year is about showing the world the injustice that was done to her recently convicted husband, not an attempt to protect herself from prosecution, as some allege. In an interview with the Associated Press Thursday in the same Tegucigalpa home where police arrested her husband, Juan Orlando Hernández, in February 2022 on a U.S. extradition request, she said that in conversations with Hernández since his conviction, he told her, "This is another test and we are going to continue exhausting appeals. The world saw the injustice that was committed and we have to remain standing." Senegal's top opposition leader, Ousmane Sonko, has been released from prison ahead of the country's presidential election later this month. His lawyer, Bamba Cissé, said Sonko and his key ally, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, were both released. Sonko left the prison complex in his car as crowds celebrated on Thursday night. It wasn't immediately clear how the release of the 2 opposition politicians would impact the March 24 election. Faye has been named as the opposition's election candidate after Sonko was barred from running. Sonko is widely seen as the main challenger to President Macky Sall's ruling party. French President Emmanuel Macron is warning Western powers not to show any weakness to Russia as he reiterates his position that sending Western troops into Ukraine should not be ruled out. But he also says that today's situation doesn't require that. In an interview on French national television Thursday, Macron was asked about the prospect of sending Western troops to Ukraine, which he publicly raised last month in comments that prompted pushback from other European leaders. Macron said that we're not in that situation today, but added that all these options are possible. Macron said, "Today, to have peace in Ukraine, we must not be weak." Once a glittering weekend getaway for wealthy residents of Mexico City, Valle de Bravo has been reduced to a shrinking, muddy puddle by a combination of drought, water transfers to the capital, bad planning, and lawlessness. Valle, as the reservoir has been known since the 1940s, is being drained by Mexico City's refusal to fix broken pipes that waste much of its water, along with the unrestrained construction of private dams and holding ponds by suspiciously wealthy and powerful newcomers. in a country where the government appears not to listen and gang violence is common, residents and activists can only watch their beloved lake disappear. With each passing day, the relatives of hostages held in Gaza since October 7th face a deepening despair. Their hopes were raised that a ceasefire deal was near to bring some of their loved ones home by the start of Ramadan, the Muslim holy month that began Monday. But that informal deadline passed without any agreement. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's promise to achieve total victory in the war against Hamas now rings hollow for many hostages' relatives. Families who have spent months protesting and calling for a deal feel dejected and unheard by Israel's war cabinet. The Israeli government believes at least 34 of the 130 hostages still in Gaza are dead. A Japanese high court has ruled that denying same-sex marriage is unconstitutional and called for urgent government action to address the lack of any law allowing for such unions. The court does not have the power to overturn the current marriage law, and government offices may continue to deny marriage status to same-sex couples unless the existing law is revised or replaced. The Sapporo High Court ruling Thursday says not allowing same-sex couples to marry and enjoy the same benefits as straight couples violates their fundamental right to have a family. Support for marriage equality has grown among the Japanese public, but the governing Liberal Democratic Party is opposed. Ukrainians living in regions illegally annexed by Russia are being coerced to vote in the presidential election of their wartime occupier, Vladimir Putin, an exercise denounced by Ukraine as an illegitimate effort by Moscow to tighten control over its neighbor. People in Russia don't begin voting en masse until Friday, but polls are already open for Ukrainians in 4 annexed regions close to the front line, some of which are not fully in Putin's control. Many Ukrainians fled these regions, or were deported by Russia after Putin's invasion 2 years ago. There are reports of people being forced to vote at gunpoint, and one analyst described the election as an extension of the war itself. As Vladimir Putin heads for another 6-year term as Russia's president, there's little electoral drama in the race. What he does after he crosses the finish line, however, is what's drawing attention, and for many observers, provoking anxiety. The voting that concludes on Sunday is all but certain to allow Putin to remain in office until 2030, giving him a full 3 decades of leading Russia as either president or prime minister. The heft of that long tenure and the thorough suppression of effective domestic opposition voices gives Putin a very strong hand. That's bolstered by surprising resilience in the economy, Moscow's consistent military advances in Ukraine, and flagging support for aid to Kiev from Washington and other quarters. The Somali extremist group Al-Shabaab says its fighters have attacked a hotel in the capital Mogadishu, where a loud explosion and gunfire have been heard. Al-Shabaab said on its Telegram channel that its fighters managed to penetrate the SYL Hotel, which is located not far from the presidential palace in a normally secure part of Mogadishu. The hotel is patronized by government officials. There was no immediate word on casualties. Attacks in the seaside capital had reduced in recent weeks, amid a beefing up of security there. Al-Shabaab, which opposes Somalia's federal government, is responsible for many lethal attacks on hotels and other places over the years. Thank you for joining us here at the Dunkley Report International News. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the latest breaking stories.